Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and I'm super happy to have with us on the line Katrina vanden Heuvel, the editor and publisher of The Nation magazine. She writes a weekly column for The Washington Post. One of the, in my opinion, one of the most brilliant and insightful reporters and commentators of our era. Katrina, welcome back to the program.
Thom, I don't know if I can continue after that introduction. Thank you very much.
It is heartfelt.
Muster strength in these times.
Yeah, it is heartfelt. By the way, people can reach you at, they can tweet you at Katrina Nation. And
come to thenation.com.
Right.
And yeah, absolutely.
Right. So
I have to say, I think Twitter in our time has been hyper covered if it's the tweeter in chief, and it's deformed and debased some of our coverage. But Twitter in general, if it's not too vitriolic, directs one to a lot of interesting things.
Yeah,
so.
I agree. In fact, apropos of that, before we get into your recent commentaries on media malpractice and Trump's overseas escalations, I've been wondering out loud whether Trump's tweet this morning attacking Mika Brzezinski for having a facelift and saying that she was bleeding, his weird obsession with blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this, and women, is this, do you think that this is some, maybe just in his mind, but some brilliant strategic effort to redirect our attention away from the healthcare / tax cut for billionaire debacle? Or is this...
First of all, I have to say I have not followed that tweet. You know, it is a measure that even an extraordinary, I mean, you have to follow it. But yeah, no, I think a few months ago, the New York Times did a story asking journalists about Trump's tweets. What do you do with it? What's the... I think the hyper coverage feeds into Trump's ability, and it's something I cite at the top of my column on military escalation, which is what Naomi Klein writes in her latest book, this kind of rolling shock of distraction, of directing people to kind of these, distractions, keeps one from keeping one's eyes on the prize, which is the breakdown of what I hate to call healthcare, because it's essentially a tax cut wrapped up in taking away healthcare from millions of people. But yeah, I think it's there's an ugliness to the tweets about women.
Yeah.
You brought that up.
Have you not read the tweet this morning? I'd be glad to read it to you.
Please.
Let me share it with you, because this is beyond the pale. He tweeted, "I heard poorly rated Morning Joe speaks badly of me. I don't watch anymore. Then how come low IQ crazy Mika, along with Psycho Joe, came to Mar-a-Lago 3 nights in a row around New Year's Eve and insisted on joining me? She was bleeding badly from a facelift, so I said no."
God, it's so ugly.
Yeah, I mean, I've never...
my stomach churns listening to that, to think that this man, it's debased on so many levels, and it's so narcissistic. These tweets come out of a psychic place of a man who just has to hit back and be ugly to particularly women, but to all people. So I hadn't read it, and I'm kind of shocked. And I will add one other thing. I mean, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, the whole issue of being at Mar-a-Lago, it's a question of access journalism, what was going on.
Sure.
But I'd also say, I mean, Mika Brzezinski's father died just a few weeks ago. What's he doing talking about her, any woman in that way? It's really ugly.
Yeah. It
debases it. I mean, take the Twitter feed account from him, really. I mean, there is a powerful, ugly tool at work here, Thom, and you alluded to it. Fox is another vehicle for this guy, but he knows that he has in his tweets this direct connection with millions of people, and it's very powerful and very dangerous. I do believe it's helpful sometimes. Social media can avoid the media gatekeepers. We saw that with Bernie Sanders' campaign, where there was really a welter of great ideas of inclusive populism, of trying to speak to millions of people when the mainstream media, corporate media, wouldn't carry his message. But social media used in the ways Trump is using it shows how debased it can get.
Yeah, I'm just, like I said, I've been wondering out loud, does he think this is some kind of brilliant strategy to distract us from all the awful stuff that his administration is doing? I mean, Scott Pruitt just approved a pesticide that causes birth defects in rats and mice, if it's just in the same room with pregnant mothers, not even ingested by? I mean,
we're looking at it, I mean, the other, Trump, with all the sham populist talk, is essentially a shameless plutocrat who is just doing the trickle down, rolling back, tax cuts for the rich, filling the swamp with Goldman Sachs executives, hitting on the most vulnerable, and failing. I think what's important, and I do think Trump knows this in his narcissistic being, he's failing his own supporters.
Yes.
And you get that kind of ambivalent, weird, schizophrenic reaction, like, the healthcare bill, House healthcare bill is mean, and he's not really, doesn't care that much about what comes out, but he's violating promises, whether it's on no cuts to Medicare, no cuts to Medicaid, whether it's about staying out of the Middle East, not getting bogged down, avoiding regime change. I mean, these are promises he made to people, his supporters, and now he's trashing them all.
Yeah. So, you're the media. I mean, you publish The Nation magazine. I'm the media, I guess, or in the media, with this radio and TV show. How do we react to this, and how should the larger media react to it? It's almost like it's something we've never seen before. To the best of my knowledge.
There's been hate. I think you were talking before, Tom, in interesting ways about the history of how we got here, the media history.
Right.
The rollback of the Fairness Doctrine, the cuts to reporting, the cost of reporting, the cost of foreign bureaus. I mean, I think we go back to 101 as best we can. I mean, reporting on issues, reporting on substance, not letting distraction take us to scandal and palace intrigue, trying to get to systemic root issues. It's tough because you also need, even where we sit, we need to, for example, talk about the tweet, today. But maybe there's a way to unpack that and look at his policies toward women, the policies taking rights away from those who have mental health issues, looking real tough at substantive policy issues. My gripe in that column I wrote on media malpractice, a theme you and I have talked a lot about, and it was something that, we've seen for years, but it played out in 2016, where there was so little attention to policy issues. When I say policy issues, it's not something sterile, I hope. I mean, it's really issues that affect people's lives. And there was so much given to scandal. One, I think it turns people off of engagement. They become more participants. I mean, more spectators than participants. And, it leads people not to mobilize if they don't know what's happening to the gutting of healthcare or the gutting of climate or what's happening in military escalations that will send young men and women to Afghanistan, young men and women who might not even have been born around 9/11 when we launched that war. These are things that I think we need to keep coming back to and not losing sight of as too much of the media churn, particularly cable news these days. We can talk about the ratings war. I think has become too fixated on the scandals, ignoring some of the real scandals, like what you just said about Pruitt, EPA, rollback, how that'll lead to deaths. There's a lot of scandal coverage which isn't as necessary.
Yeah. Why do you think I suspect I know the answer, but why our media our corporate media is more interested in reporting on interpersonal scandals than on policy scandals, when policy scandals actually kill people and interpersonal scandals typically, have been the province of the National Enquirer?
Well, interpersonal scandals have also been the province of Beltway journalism for years, right? Who's up, who's down, the turf.
Yeah.
Often it doesn't mean much to people outside the Beltway, but there is that obsession. But I think it goes back in a large measure to what we've witnessed over the last few decades, which is the conglomeratization, the Murdochization, the profitization, the commodification of news. And I think, it's like this kind of, and I'm not sure it's the obliteration, we've talked about this, but it's certainly the real blurring of lines between entertainment and news that leads people to fix on people. Now, I agree that we need to, when we do policy coverage, it should be human. It should have it should have narrative stories. It have people and how people are affected, not just a story about a chemical that's been deregulated. But look, for example, at what's happened in the UK in the last 2 weeks. That burning tower. Can you think of anything more horrific and dramatic? That, to me, is the symbol of the consequences of deregulation. Deregulation that has been on offer and driven by conservative governments in Britain, and certainly part of what we're witnessing in the landscape today and has been the agenda, mostly of Republicans, but not only, over the last 40 years or so. Deregulation kills people, costs people's lives. And I think that story needs to have a human face to it. And that's not sensationalism, I don't believe, if you're illuminating a larger, more systemic problem. But it will engage people to learn more and read more about policy, systemic, deep issues.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the very best ways to cover policy, and we're seeing so little of it now. Just, real quickly, where do you see this whole tax cut for billionaires going? It seems to me that the Koch network and the other billionaires who are so offended by this 3.8% tax on their already low 20% capital gains income tax. And by the way, you've got to earn $250,000 a year in capital gains before you even start paying that additional 3.8%. So this really is a tax only paid by really rich people, right, that is used to fund the Medicaid expansion and Obamacare. It seems to me that these billionaires who have been funding the Republican Party all along are saying this is the price, if you want to get reelected, if you want us to throw, 30, 40, 50 million bucks into your next election campaign, give me my tax break so I get that $100 million back and I make a profit on it.
I wish I could be more hopeful. I do believe organized people at town halls and rallies around this country will show what they think of this tax cut, this odious health care bill. But I do think, Tom, something you've spent so much time talking about, fighting against, the corrosion of our democracy by money. This Supreme Court's not about to do anything democratic. And I do think we're witnessing, we talk a lot about the dangers of corruption and oligarchy and plutocracy abroad. Yeah. But as Bernie Sanders and others have raised, are we a democracy or are we an oligarchy? I think we need to raise that question in human terms. And I think, the progressive ideas like Medicare for all have real support. But until we can get billionaires out of the process, it's tough. The alternative is to get a few billionaires at this moment until we have clean money, public financing of elections nationally. But to, wage a full-out battle for progressive ideas, which some, people with resources fully understand is good for a sustainable, healthy, democratic, functioning democracy. But it is, it's really, it's so odious that there's a retroactive tax cut on investment income in this bill. First of all, and I'll stop, but it is so the injustice that the tax rates for investment income are lower than that for just basic labor. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to begin with, and what made these people so. And by the way, it was on this program that Jimmy Carter came on and he said, we're no longer a democracy, we are an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery. I mean, full stop. I mean, he just came right out and said it. And that was 2 years ago.
And I think more and more people are, listen, the former president says it, more and more people, I think, Warren Buffett in his own way, complex.
People are getting it. Yeah. Katrina, we're out of time. But Katrina vanden Heuvel, The Nation, at Katrina Nation. Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you, Tom.
Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Katrina vanden Heuvel, the editor-publisher of The Nation magazine, thenation.com. You can tweet her at Katrina Nation. We'll be back.